Great Pyramids of Egypt, and this is CNN.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Michael Holmes. Coming up here on CNN today, bracing for Hurricane Dorian. Residents of Florida scramble to stock up on the necessities. Amazon still burning. CNN travels to Brazil to see how indigenous communities are helping to fight destructive fires. And backlash after Boris Johnson's move to suspend the UK Parliament. Legal challenges, political ones as well. Growing fear and a growing threat along Florida's east coast, where Hurricane Dorian is expected to take direct aim as a dangerous Category 4 storm. Long lines, low supplies being reported up and down the coast. Florida residents looking to stock up on petrol and food. Right now, Dorian is set to intensify over the next few days, churning over warm waters in the Atlantic. Leila Santiago is tracking preparations and the mood in Florida as residents wait to see where the hurricane will make landfall. She joins me from Port Canaveral. No one knows where it's headed exactly, so I suppose everyone takes precautions.
Right, so much uncertainty, so they are watching it very closely, Michael. You know, a lot of folks I've talked to are pretty quick to say, it's still early, we're monitoring, we remember Hurricane Maria, so we understand the power of a hurricane and what it can do to a community. And when I asked every single person, what is it that you're most concerned about? It was the same response, a direct threat.
We'll get it for you.
Tonight, Hurricane Dorian is barreling toward Florida. Expected to be a Category 4 storm, it's already causing hurricane-force issues for the Sunshine State.
We were supposed to stay here till Monday, but we had to make some subtle changes to the itinerary because of the hurricane.
As Floridians prepare to hunker down or get out, the coming storm is forcing others to stay away during the Labor Day weekend, usually a vacation season moneymaker for hotels and cruise ships.
In terms of money, how much will you lose here?
This hotel, in excess of $120,000.
Deborah Green says she's had a steady stream of cancellations at her hotel on what was to be a sold-out holiday weekend. But tonight, Florida officials say better safe than sorry.
But the time to act is now. If you haven't acted, act to make preparations. Do not wait until it's too late.
Dorian has already pummeled the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and lashed Puerto Rico with rain. But since it has moved back out into open waters, it is picking up steam and could now pack winds as high as 115 miles an hour by the time it makes landfall early Monday, prompting Floridians to take action.
Just getting ready for the hurricane.
Just getting prepared before the storm comes. Just want to protect against what's coming, potentially.
Tonight, the rush to fill up at the gas pump is underway.
Saturday, I'm going to put my shutters up. You know, the praying has already begun.
And in Daytona Beach, they're also filling up with sand and lining up at hardware stores so they can board up at home.
What you don't want is to have a situation where you can't keep your family and friends safe because you didn't take the time to prepare ahead.
Floridians are being warned to have 7 days of food, water, and medicine on hand.
Just trying to be prepared. I have, a 1-year-old at home and my daughter, and it's not the first hurricane I've been through, so.
Meantime, even NASA says it's not taking any chances either, moving its mobile launch platform back inside.
Obviously, because the mobile launcher is so tall, it will be affected by the wind.
A feat that will take at least 8 hours, using a 6 million pound vehicle to slowly roll the platform 3.5 miles to safety.
And Michael, where we are right now, Port Canaveral, this is actually the world's second busiest cruise port. Last fiscal year, 4.5 million passengers came through here. So I checked in with the port. They said they had 2 cruise ships today. We actually saw them take off. They expect 3 tomorrow. But after that, we could see them have some adjustments to itinerary because of the storm. And as you heard from that hotel manager, that could be something that's very concerning for the businesses here.
4.5 million people. Remind me not to go there. You've got people in that whole area of the state still feeling the effects of Irma, I guess, 2 years ago.
Right. Right, actually, there's a hotel here that had damages after Irma. They had to shut down, had to have new construction. They're still not open as a result. And that was 2 years ago. I checked in with them today, and they're hoping to open by the end of the year. But of course, this is a big concern because they're still very much trying to rebuild after a hurricane that came 2 years ago. Now, I want to be clear that that was one hotel in an area where many of the hotels are back and running, but it still speaks to the concern and sort of the anxiety that some of these business owners have after coming back into business after Hurricane Irma 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping an eye on it for us, Leila Santiago. Thanks so much. All right, let's talk more about the forecast. Alison Chinchar is tracking Dorian, joins us now with the latest. And we were chatting and you said the tracks are starting to agree?
They are, and location point.
Right.
So if you recall, for a while there, it ranged anywhere from, say, the equivalent distance of Jacksonville, Florida, all the way to Key West.
Right.
They're now starting to come in alignment. Where they vary is the timing of when this makes landfall. And the two biggest models, we're talking 2 days apart. Yes, you heard that. Days. It can. So let's take a look at what we've been talking about. Here's the latest statistics with Hurricane Dorian. Winds right now 140 kilometers per hour, moving northwest at 21 kilometers per hour. Again, this storm, we've got multiple hurricane hunter missions out there investigating this particular storm. That's really going to help us understand if the storm is still continuing to intensify, as we suspect it is, because it's over very warm ocean water, and that's fuel for these storms. Here's a look at the latest track. Again, we still anticipate this to get up to a major hurricane. Category 4 is still the anticipated height that we expect this storm to be. But again, the one thing you will notice, the track is starting to slow in terms of landfall time. Take, for example, the models. This is the American model here on the left, the European model on the right. Notice their landfall points are really not that far off. We're still kind of focusing on the south central portion of this state. But look at the times. Local, Monday 8 a.m. to Wednesday at 8 a.m. You're talking 2 entire days different in terms of that landfall time. So there's still obviously a lot of question involved in exactly when and where this storm will make landfall. The biggest shift, however, has been in the American model. This was the Wednesday night run. This was the Thursday night run. Notice that shift, that gradual push of the landfall point being a little bit farther to the south. That does not mean that North Florida will not have any impacts. There are still going to be significant impacts from this particular storm, namely rainfall. Take a look at this widespread amount here. You're talking widespread locations, about 100 millimeters, but notice in that central region, closer to where they anticipate that landfall to be, 200, if not even 300 millimeters of rain as that system continues to move in. It's not just rainfall, though, however. You do also have that significant wave height here, where you could be looking at as much as 6 meters, Michael, especially closer to that landfall point. One other thing I would like to mention is that the city of Miami, they've got that river there, king tides. The highest tides that they end up seeing sometimes across the entire year are likely going to coincide potentially with the landfall time. And that may also have a big factor in how much flooding South Florida ends up getting.
All right, Alison, thank you. Alison Chinchar there for us. Now, the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, is banning the use of fire for land clearing in the Amazon, but for 60 days only. It follows international outrage over how he has handled the massive fires ravaging the rainforest. Land clearing with fire is common practice among farmers in rural areas who want to make room for crops and livestock at the expense of the Amazon rainforest. Bolsonaro has repeatedly insisted an opening up of the Amazon for development is something he wants, but it's a policy now backfiring. CNN senior international correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh is in Porto Velho in Brazil.
Michael, the 60-day ban is a federal ban in Brazil, which essentially means that the limited number of occasions that people were allowed to use fire to clear land are significantly restricted. It's a bid essentially to try and make properly illegal what really should have been illegal across much of the country already. And it is interesting to see that we're now kind of a week into international condemnation of the Brazilian government's attitude towards the Amazon fires, when they put this particular, you might say, obvious measure into play. But when you go out into the savannah, which is often part of the Amazon area as well, you see quite how intense these fires are and how they rage and how limited the resources applied to fixing them are. Dusk isn't when you rest as the Amazon burns. It's when the day cools enough to give firefighters a chance. Everything we see in a bumpy hour's drive to nowhere turned to ashes in the last 4 days. This is how. A war that marches across the bush and into the trees when it can. That feels a bit like the end of the world, doesn't it? And when flames rage like this, the firefighters actually have to pull back. And there's nothing they can do, really, until the wind dies down. Destruction that overshadows an entire branch of our species here. The Tenharim are an indigenous community, 1,000 strong, who say they legally own nearly 1 million hectares nearby. The next generation will have a darker future, he says. Since this president came to power, these things are happening a lot more. President Jair Bolsonaro is keen to bring what he calls progress to the Amazon, even pushing to let these areas be commercially farmed for the first time. The raging fires, all of which here have burned since he pledged to send 43,000 troops, clear land for farming too. The sun rises again on a little bit less of this marvel. The Tenharim didn't want to be part of our world, but now it wants part of them. All around are signs of what's fueling the inferno. Land cleared for cattle, so we can eat more beef. Logging and deforestation to enable crops like soy to grow, line the busy roads. The firefighters that tackle the blaze here are 3 hours' drive from the nearest village. This is the land we flew over 4 days before, but the devastation is more final from the ground. Fires do occur naturally in the brush, like Bolsonaro says, but it was startling how nearly every policeman, firefighter or official we spoke to said very many are caused deliberately. To clear land, to farm, to alleviate poverty, or just make the rich richer. Yet they don't have the water here to put the fire out, only stop its spread. Damage limitation only, with the most basic tools on the front line of this global environmental crisis. Now, Michael, the question obviously is, how do you fix this problem? You can't stop natural fires from spreading, of course. You can perhaps limit the deforestation, which enables them to spread so fast. And there is potentially also a human solution here too. It's probably not entirely those brave men you saw there with their limited resources, spending days and nights in the intense heat, risking their lives trying to put these fires out. It may perhaps start with something simpler, which is trying to persuade humans that start the fires to clear land, to benefit agriculture, to enrich themselves, to not do that. And perhaps also persuade the politicians, like President Bolsonaro, who came to power explaining to people they could use the Amazon as a resource, to perhaps change course. There's a lot of international pressure to do that. He's resisting a lot of it. He seems to be half reluctantly listening to parts of it too. But the problem is not fixed here. We're heading towards the drier, worse season for fires in September, and many are deeply concerned that we may just see this worsen every year, Michael.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Nick Payton-Walsh there. Moving on.